The small Zephyrian research ship Quiet Explorer drifted peacefully through the outer rim of the galaxy. Captain Veltar was enjoying what he thought would be another boring day of mapping empty space. His crew of 12 scientists had been out here for 6 months, cataloging star systems that nobody really cared about. That all changed when their communications officer, Nixara, suddenly sat up straight at her station. Her pale blue skin turned even paler as she stared at her screen. "Captain, you need to hear this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Veltar walked over, his forearms crossed behind his back. The Zephyrians were a peaceful race who had never seen real conflict. The worst thing they dealt with was usually equipment failures or the occasional space pirate running away from authorities. "What is it?" he asked. Nixara played the message. It crackled with static, but the words were clear enough once their translation computers worked on it. "This is colony ship New Dawn. We are under attack by Korthok raiders. Repeat, we are under attack. Our shields are failing. We have women and children aboard. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need immediate help. This is Commander Minho of the human settlement. We won't last much longer." The bridge fell silent. Veltar felt his stomach drop. He had heard of the Korthak. They were raiders who showed up, took everything valuable, and left nothing but empty ships floating in space. But humans, that was impossible. "Run that through the database," Veltar ordered. The results came back quickly. According to galactic records, humans had died out 300 years ago. Their home planet had been hit by cosmic radiation that killed everything living on it. There shouldn't be any humans left anywhere in the galaxy. "Sir," Nixara said quietly, "the signal is coming from grid section 447. That's marked as a quarantine zone." Veltar knew what that meant. Grid section 447 was where they put the Deathworlds, planets so dangerous that even thinking about landing on them could kill you. No civilized species went near those places. "Are you sure about the translation?" he asked. "Yes, sir. The message is repeating every 30 seconds. They're definitely calling themselves humans." Veltar made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't help these humans himself. His ship had no weapons and his crew were scientists, not soldiers. But he couldn't ignore people calling for help either. "Send everything to the Galactic Council immediately," he ordered. "Mark it as Priority 1 emergency." As the message shot toward the Council headquarters, none of them realized they had just discovered that the galaxy's most feared legends were very much alive. The emergency message from Captain Veltar arrived at the Galactic Council chambers during their weekly peaceful negotiations meeting. Counselor Vex, a tall reptilian being with golden scales, was discussing trade routes when his assistant rushed in with the urgent transmission. The massive council chamber fell quiet as the human distress call played through the speakers. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their floating chairs, listening to Commander Minho's desperate plea for help. When it finished, the silence stretched uncomfortably long. "This has to be some kind of joke," declared Counselor Brixen, his tentacles waving dismissively. "Humans have been extinct for centuries. Everyone knows that." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Galactic Council had excellent records. If humans were dead, they were dead. But Counselor Vex wasn't so sure. He pulled up the transmission data on his holographic display. The signal originated from grid section 447, he announced. That got everyone's attention. Grid section 447 was where they kept the Deathworld classifications, planets. So hostile that even their automated probes usually got destroyed just trying to take pictures. "Even more reason to ignore this," huffed Counselor Yelena, her crystalline body chiming with each word. "Deathworlders are children's stories. Monsters parents tell their young ones about to make them behave. Scary creatures that eat metal and breathe poison," added another counselor with a laugh. "What's next? Are we going to get distress calls from space dragons?" Vex studied the data more carefully. Something bothered him about dismissing this so quickly. The technology signatures in the transmission were real enough, and the Korthok raiders mentioned in the message, they were definitely real and dangerous. What if we're wrong? Vex asked quietly. What if there are survivors out there, and we just let them die? The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors argued that investigating Deathworld signals was suicide. Others worried about the political implications of ignoring a genuine distress call. After 2 hours of arguing, Vex made his decision. I'm authorizing a long-range reconnaissance mission, he announced, raising his voice above the noise. Admiral, Kef will take a small fleet to investigate. If we find wreckage in empty space, we'll know this was just some kind of echo from an old transmission. And if we find living humans? Asked Counselor Brixen. Nex paused. According to every story he'd ever heard, Deathworlders were savage creatures who solved problems by breaking things and eating their enemies. Then we'll observe from a safe distance and report back, he said finally. After all, how dangerous could they really be? Admiral Kef had been expecting to find floating debris and maybe a few scattered distress beacons. His small council fleet of 12 ships approached grid section 447 with their sensors on maximum range, ready to confirm what everyone already knew, that humans were extinct and this whole mission was a waste of time. His chief sensor operator, a nervous Quellan named Pipix, suddenly made a sound like a squeaking door. Admiral Pipix whispered, "You're going to want to see this." The main display lit up with sensor readings that made no sense. Instead of empty space and wreckage, they were looking at over 300 ships arranged in perfect defensive formations around a green and blue planet. That can't be right, Kef muttered, his scales shifting from blue to worried purple. Run the scan again. The second scan showed the same impossible result. 300 ships, all different sizes, all clearly built for war. They looked nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels that galactic civilization preferred. These ships were thick and blocky, covered in armor plating and weapon systems that stuck out like metal thorns. "They look like flying fortresses," whispered his communications officer. Before Admiral Kef could respond, his comm system crackled to life. The voice that came through was calm, professional, and speaking perfect galactic standard. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Jinwoo of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are approaching an active combat zone. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Kef nearly fell out of his command chair. A human, a living, breathing human, was talking to him. "This is Admiral Kef of the Galactic Council," he managed to say. "We received your distress call and came to investigate." There was a pause. Then Jinwoo's voice came back, and there was something in his tone that made Kef's skin crawl with worry. "Admiral, I appreciate the Council's response, but you need to understand something important. We have a Korthok battle fleet incoming in approximately 6 hours. When they arrive, this is going to become very dangerous very quickly. We can help evacuate your people," Kef offered. Jinwoo laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Admiral, with respect, you don't understand. We're not running. We're going to fight. And humans fight very differently than what your people are used to. For your own safety, I strongly suggest you maintain a distance of at least 50,000 kilometers from the combat zone." Looking at those brutal, weapon-covered ships surrounding the human world, Admiral Kef decided that was probably very good advice. The Korthok warfleet arrived like a swarm of angry insects, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. "Admiral," Kef watched his sensors light up with contact after contact until the numbers stopped making sense. Over 1,000 ships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields. The Korthak were known throughout the galaxy as efficient raiders. They showed up, made demands, and if you didn't surrender immediately, they turned your world into smoking rubble. No one fought them head-to-head anymore. It was considered suicide. The lead Korthok vessel, a massive dreadnought covered in spikes, and weapon ports broadcast its message on all frequencies. The voice was cold and mechanical. "Attention, human settlement. You will surrender all resources, technology, and population for processing within 1 standard hour. Resistance will result in complete planetary sterilization. You have been warned." Admiral Kef felt sick to his stomach. He had seen what Korthok processing meant. It wasn't pretty, and no one survived it. The human response came immediately from Fleet Admiral Soyoung, aboard the flagship Iron Tiger. "Negative. Just one word. Not we refuse or we need time to consider, or any of the usual diplomatic responses. Just a flat, simple negative, delivered in a voice that sounded almost bored. The Korthok commander seemed confused by the brevity. "You do not understand. We have 1,000 ships. You have 300. Surrender now, or die." "We understand perfectly," Soyoung replied. "The answer is still negative. If you want our world, come and take it." What happened next made Admiral Kef question everything he thought he knew about space combat. Instead of forming up in long-range battle lines, like civilized species did, the human ships suddenly accelerated at full power, directly toward the Korthok fleet. Not in a coordinated advance, they just charged straight into the enemy formation, like wild animals. The first human ship to make contact was a destroyer called Stubborn Mule. Instead of firing energy weapons from a safe distance, it rammed straight into a Korthok cruiser at maximum velocity. The explosion lit up space like a small star. Then the real madness began. Human ships fired solid metal projectiles that punched through Korthok shields like they weren't even there. They used their own ships as weapons, ramming and boarding enemy vessels, while their crews fought hand-to-hand in the corridors. "This is insane," whispered Admiral Kef's tactical officer. "They're not following any rules of engagement." Kef watched in stunned silence as 300 human ships tore into the Korthok fleet like wolves attacking sheep. These weren't the extinct, primitive creatures from the history books. These were something far more dangerous. The boarding alarm screamed through the human ship. "Mountain Breaker!" As Korthok forces breached the hull, Captain Hyan-Su grabbed his rifle and headed toward the breach point, his heavy boots clanging against the metal deck. Admiral Kef watched the battle through his long-range sensors, but what he was seeing didn't make sense. The humans were actually winning these close-quarters fights. How was that possible? Inside the human ship, Marine Commander Jahoon moved through the corridors like she was born for this. The Korthok warriors were twice the size of humans, with natural armor plating and claws that could tear through steel. But they had never fought creatures from a death world before. "Delta Squad, flank them from Corridor 7, Jihoon spoke calmly into her comm unit. "Charlie's squad, cut off their retreat. Nobody gets back to their ship." The humans moved with a coordination that seemed impossible. They didn't just fight as individuals, they fought like a pack of hunters who had been working together their entire lives. When one human was in trouble, 3 others appeared from different directions to help. The Korthok had superior strength and natural weapons, but the humans had something else. They had spent millions of years evolving on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They knew how to turn any environment into a weapon. Captain Hyan-Su used the ship's artificial gravity against the invaders, switching it on and off to send them crashing into walls. Jihoon's Marines used the narrow corridors to prevent the larger Korthok from using their size advantage. But what really shocked Admiral Kef was watching the weapons the humans used, while the rest of the galaxy had moved to clean energy weapons. Centuries ago, humans still used primitive projectile firearms that fired solid metal bullets. These weapons had been banned by galactic law for being too brutal. The Korthok's energy shields, designed to stop plasma bolts and laser beams, were completely useless against chunks of metal flying at hypersonic speeds. Even worse, Admiral Kef's sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Several human ships were armed with nuclear weapons. Devices so dangerous that most civilized species had nightmares about them. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "they're using weapons that could destroy entire cities." As if to prove the point, a human destroyer fired a nuclear torpedo into the center of a Korthok battle group. The explosion was so bright that Admiral Keffy's screens automatically dimmed to protect his crew's eyesight. When the light faded, 6 Korthok ships had simply vanished. "What kind of people arm their ships with planet killers?" someone whispered. On the bridge, Admiral Keff was beginning to understand why Deathworlders were feared across the galaxy. Wing Commander Taman sat in the command center of the human flagship, watching tactical displays that showed a battle no civilized species should be winning. His people were outnumbered 3-1, but the Korthok fleet was falling apart. "Target their environmental systems," Taman ordered calmly. "Forget their weapons and shields. Hit their life support." Admiral Keff watched in confusion from his observation position. Why would anyone target life support systems? It seemed like a waste of firepower when enemy ships had massive guns pointed at you. But Taman understood something the galaxy had forgotten. Most species needed very specific conditions to survive. The right temperature, the right air mixture, the right pressure. Humans had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them with poison air, crushing gravity, and deadly weather. They could survive almost anywhere. The Korthok couldn't. Human ships began firing precise shots at environmental control centers. Within minutes, Korthok vessels started venting atmosphere into space. Their crews, unable to breathe, began abandoning ship or retreating to try and repair their life support. "Brilliant," whispered Admiral Keff's tactical officer. "They're not trying to destroy the ships. They're making them unlivable." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Hyjin was performing flying maneuvers that should have been impossible. Her fighter squadron dove through the wreckage of destroyed ships, using chunks of metal and debris as cover. But they weren't just hiding behind the debris. They were pushing it toward enemy ships like weapons. Admiral Keff's crew watched in amazement as human fighters grabbed pieces of destroyed vessels with magnetic grapples and hurled them at Korthok ships. A chunk of armor plating, accelerated to incredible speed, could punch through a hull just as effectively as an expensive missile. "How are their pilots surviving those turns?" asked Admiral Keff's navigator. The human fighters were pulling maneuvers that created G-forces strong enough to turn most species into liquid. But humans had evolved under gravity that was twice as strong as galactic standard. Their bodies were built to handle punishment that would kill other beings instantly. Hyjin spun her fighter in ways that made seasoned council pilots feel sick just watching. The Korthok had expected to fight a normal space battle with long-range energy exchanges and civilized tactics. Instead, they found themselves fighting creatures who treated vacuum combat like a knife fight in a dark alley. Taman smiled grimly as another Korthok ship went dark, its crew evacuating into escape pods. "That's the problem with fighting Deathworlders," he said into his comm. "We don't fight fair." The battle was reaching its peak when everything went wrong for Admiral Keff's observation fleet. 3 damaged Korthok destroyers, trying to escape. The human assault spotted the council ships hanging back at what they thought was a safe distance. Easy targets, the Korthok commander must have thought. The council vessels had no heavy weapons and minimal shields. Perfect for a quick victory to salvage some pride from this disaster. Admiral Keff felt his stomach drop as plasma cannons swiveled toward his fleet. His ships were built for exploration and diplomacy, not combat. They had about as much chance of surviving a Korthok attack as a paper boat in a hurricane. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but everyone knew it was hopeless. That's when Captain Wu Jin and his heavy cruiser Iron Fist appeared between the council fleet and the attacking Korthok ships. "Council vessels, this is Captain Wu Jin. Stay exactly where you are. We've got this." The Iron Fist took the full force of the Korthok attack meant for Admiral Kef's ships. Energy beams that should have vaporized the Council vessels instead slammed into the human ship's thick armor plating. The Iron Fist shuddered under the impact, but held together. "Why is he doing this?" Admiral Kef's communications officer asked in amazement. "We're not even allies. We just showed up." Captain Wu Jin answered that question by opening fire on the Korthok ships with everything he had. "Nobody shoots at civilians while I'm around," he announced over the comm, but the Iron Fist was taking heavy damage. Sections of hull were breaching, and Admiral Kef could see small figures in spacesuits being blown out into the vacuum. That's when combat medic Mina proved that humans were as good at saving lives as they were at taking them. Her medical ship healing hand shot out from the human formation, dodging plasma fire to reach the damaged areas. Mina's rescue teams moved with the same precision the human military used in combat. They pulled injured crew members from the wreckage, administered first aid in zero gravity, and got everyone to safety while energy beams lit up the space around them. "Medical teams to Council vessels," Mina's voice came over the comm. "We have several of your people who got caught in the debris field. They're alive, but need immediate medical attention." Admiral Kef stared at his screens in confusion. These humans had just spent hours tearing apart a Korthok fleet with brutal efficiency. But the moment innocent bystanders were threatened, they threw themselves in harm's way to protect complete strangers. "Who are these people?" he whispered, his tactical officer, watching human rescue teams risk their lives for Council crew members. Could only shake his head in wonder. The last Korthok ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a graveyard of twisted metal and burning debris. Out of over 1,000 raiders, barely 50 ships had survived to retreat. The rest floated as wreckage in the cold vacuum of space, but victory had come at a price for the humans too. Admiral Kef's sensors showed that nearly a third of the human fleet was either destroyed or badly damaged. Entire sections of ships had been blown away, and he could see hull breaches venting atmosphere into space. Colonel Sung-ho took charge of the recovery operations from his command, ship steadfast. His voice came over the communications channels calm and professional despite the destruction around them. "All units, begin search and rescue operations. Priority 1, locate and recover all personnel. Priority 2, salvage what equipment we can. Nobody goes home until everyone is accounted for." Admiral Kef immediately offered assistance. "Colonel, we have medical teams standing by. Our doctors can help with your wounded." There was a pause. Then Sung-ho's response came back with what sounded like genuine appreciation. "Thank you, Admiral, but that won't be necessary. Our people can handle it." What Admiral Kef saw next made him question everything he knew about biology. Human rescue teams were pulling crew members from damaged ships, and many of them had injuries that should have been fatal. Broken bones, massive cuts, burns that covered half their bodies, yet these humans were walking around and talking like they had minor scrapes. One human soldier floated past Admiral Kef's observation window with what looked like a piece of metal sticking out of his shoulder. Instead of screaming in pain, the man was helping carry a wounded comrade to safety. "How are they even alive?" whispered Admiral Kef's medical officer. Recovery specialist, the Jin lead teams deeper into the wreckage than anyone thought possible. Her crews cut through twisted metal and collapsed corridors, searching every inch of every damaged ship. When Admiral Kef's crew suggested that some areas were too dangerous to search, the Jin's response was simple. "We don't leave people behind. Ever." It took 18 hours, but every single human crew member was found and accounted for. The living were treated and returned to duty faster than should have been medically possible. The fallen were recovered with honor and ceremony that made even hardened Council observers wipe their eyes. As the human fleet began limping back toward their colony world, Admiral Kef realized he had witnessed something unprecedented. These weren't just warriors, they were a people who fought as fiercely to save lives as they did to take them. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Kef received an invitation that would change galactic history forever. Fleet Admiral So requested a face-to-face meeting aboard her flagship Iron Tiger. As his shuttle approached the massive human vessel, Kef couldn't help but notice the battle scars covering its hull, and the fact that it was still fully operational despite damage that would have crippled any council ship. The docking bay was unlike anything Kef had ever seen. Instead of the clean, sterile environments preferred by galactic civilization, this looked like a working garage. Human crew members were repairing equipment, welding hull plates, and moving with the efficient purpose of people who had work to do. Fleet Admiral Soyoung met him personally at the airlock. She was smaller than Kef had expected. Most humans were, but there was something in her eyes that reminded him of the predators from his homeworld: intelligence, confidence, and a hint of danger. "Admiral Kef," she said, extending her hand. In the human greeting, "Thank you for coming. We need to talk." She led him to her command center, where star charts covered the walls. But these weren't charts of known space. They showed systems the Council had never explored, worlds that didn't appear in any database. "I suppose you're wondering how an extinct species managed to field a 300-ship fleet," Soyoung said with a slight smile. Kef nodded, still trying to process everything he had witnessed. "We're not extinct, Admiral. We never were. Our homeworld was damaged, yes, but we evacuated most of our population centuries ago. We've been quietly spreading across the galaxy ever since, building colonies in places too dangerous for other species to settle." She gestured at the star charts. 47 worlds, Admiral. All of them thriving, all of them hidden. "But why hide?" Kef asked. "The Council would have welcomed you." Soyoung's expression grew serious. "Because we knew what would happen. Every time humans get involved in galactic politics, people end up dead. We're not like other species, Admiral. We solve problems by breaking things, and that tends to make people nervous." She walked to the main display, showing images of the recent battle. "We chose isolation to protect you, not ourselves. But after what happened here, I think that policy needs to change." Kef felt his heart skip a beat. "What are you saying?" "If the Council ever faces a threat too big to handle alone," Soyoung said quietly, "you'll know where to find us.